You're listening to Tech Recruit, a podcast that educates talent acquisition and recruitment professionals on innovation to attract talent across all industries. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to the Tech Recruit podcast. My name is Stacey Broadwell, and today we have Noelle Hunt Bennett. She is the Senior Leader for Global Sourcing at Uber. Welcome, Noelle.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing good. Thank you so
Great.
much for joining us today. We have lots to cover, and I'm really excited to have you because of your current role. And you are at Uber, and everybody knows about Uber. It's the transportation service, but it's so much more than that. It's like groundbreaking, innovative in its industry with the mobile applications, and you guys are doing a lot of hiring and restructuring, and we could talk a little bit about that. But your role, and you just joined, what, 6 months ago?
Actually, in November of 2019. So I'm still a newber, like I'm pretty new.
I like that. A newber of Uber.
A newber at Uber.
So tell me about your role there, because it sounds really exciting.
It is really exciting. So when I joined Uber, the opportunity was there for me to be the senior leader overseeing global sourcing, which includes our programs and some of our expansion and some new ideas and innovations and initiatives. Some of them we're still working on because, again, I just joined, but some of them have been announced. My very first one is my PM, Hannah Brock, is going to be running, and it's the Talent Acquisition Academy program. So this is an extension of multiple companies are doing academy programs. I worked on one at Amazon too, but we take people who've never recruited before, we transition them into full-time recruiting roles throughout a very sort of intensive and focused training program over 16 weeks. And we work with people who come from non-traditional pathways into corporate, and that is, like the military spouses, professional athletics like the NFL, WNBA, Olympic athletes, and then even some of our driver partners, internals who are making job changes inside of our company. It's just a really amazing program, and we are just about ready to kick that off here pretty soon for its first cohort at Uber, and that's one of the exciting ones. The rest of my focus is really about global sourcing strategies. We are an evolving company, we're growing very fast, and it's my job to help guide our sourcing community with some new ideas, technologies, and some initiatives that will help them do their job well.
I think it is really interesting on the global strategies part, like the ideas and the technologies, and because it's a global reach, are the technologies in each of those sourcing positions, are they different? Do they vary?
I think they vary by geolocation. We're going to have some geolocations that use different tools that I wouldn't use in North America, for instance, or in the US specifically. And so we're on this sort of fact-finding mission and discovery to figure out what are those tools, what are they using in those geolocations, what's the return on investment for that, and then what's the ease of use when we talk about what our global applicant tracking system is. One of the things I learned at Amazon that I really want to get right at Uber is having our tools talk to each other and be able to efficiently make our day better, especially in the sourcing category where, one of our largest frustrations can be we're, clicking boxes all the time and moving information from one platform to another and back again. And so that's really a big goal of mine in the next year or two, is to help seamlessly bring all of those tools together. And so when we're talking about other global locations, that can be difficult because we're not 100% sure what those tools look like yet. So the fun part of this job is that it's a daily discovery. I have tons of recruiters and sourcers that are sharing information with me constantly, and we get to do a lot of deep research in there. But for the global part, I think we just have to kind of work in discovery and figure it out as we go, but we also have to put a time clock on that so that we can get our customers, which I consider the recruiting community internally, and our candidates externally, we have to do it fast so that we can get better services to them.
Having your technologies, it's like two things. Having them talk together, speak together, and have that synchronization but can we put some automation in there too?
Absolutely, we can. And no one wants to hear the bot word, right? Like we've talked about that endlessly and repeatedly at every conference for the last like maybe 4 years of my life. The bots are coming. Oh no, we're going to put us out of a job. The way that I position it in almost every talk and every time I talk to somebody is, I'm going to take some of the more menial, sort of minutia related tasks off your desk and allow you to focus on the things that actually make an impact on our candidate experience, actually move the needle on productivity, actually help you to feel like you're totally plugged in, no pun intended, into your actual sourcing role where you're doing some of the deep research and the fun stuff. And so there should be no fear around the bot word, the AI and the automation. There should be a lot of like embracing it. And you'll hear me talk a little bit more about this at TechRecruit in LA in March, but I really want our sourcing community to embrace what's available to them and to see that automation is going to be your friend. It's coming, right? It's already here, and it's going to evolve and iterate and become this amazing field for technology in our industry. But there's some opportunities there that we might miss if we're being resistant to them, and there's some places where we need to have a bigger voice in it so that it doesn't replace candidate experience.
I find this to be such a fascinating topic because to have anybody sit down and look at my process, whatever that might be, and say, this section right here is creating a bottleneck in your efficiency, and we can make you way more efficient and you can make more money if we eliminate this one thing. And on top of that, not only will we take this away, when you do this thing, this task, it will automatically do this. That sounds like something that I would say, yes, please, sign me up. But
absolutely, it can be like the most simple things, like just job posting automations, which already exist. It can be scheduling automation, which I believe is, one of the places where we really need to tighten it up. I think a little bit more on the deep end of the pool, which is like the testing and assessment automation, and making sure that applicant tracking systems are self-updating with more recent records as they find things out on the internet. So those types of automations to me are possible. And then we get into the CRMs where, that's, one of my favorite areas to work in is, talent CRMs and candidate relationship management tools. And then the next thing is having, our own candidates a little bit more in the driver's seat, no pun intended. I realize it's an Uber comment, but like having them be in the driver's seat a little bit more by doing self-selection into, how do I get to this interview? When are the time slots that are available to me? I think there's just so many places we can tighten up the automation and make our candidates feel like they're a little bit more in control of their destiny. And then also give them a little bit more ease of use instead of waiting for emails and phone calls to go back and forth. So I think it's candidate friendly. I think it takes some dumb stuff off our desk that we shouldn't be doing that machines can do better. That's sort of my basic mindset around it.
I absolutely agree with the candidate interviewing options. I mean, as small as that may sound, putting a schedule in front of somebody and saying, here's all the times that are available, what works best for your schedule, makes them feel like they're appreciated and their time is appreciated. It's such a small thing to do.
It is. And it's so empowering for them,
Is that something you currently have in place, or it's, like you said, it's one of those initiatives?
It's iterative. I can't say the word this morning. Let me have one sip of coffee and I'll say it again, huh? It's iterative.
That's a very nice Uber coffee cup you have there.
Thank you. It's like free branding. Please sign up at Uber. Let me know if you want a discount code. Just kidding. First ride is on me. Just kidding, everyone. It's not on me. I can't do that. But definitely, I think that this is something we're looking at without giving away all of our strategies. And, I don't want to put away Uber's position, but at the same time, I don't want to like talk about things we're not doing yet officially. Lots of companies are doing this. Lots of tools exist. I think the bigger thing for me is adding another tool that doesn't feed my platforms, like adding any sort of plugin or extension or anything else that doesn't actually talk to my systems. would defeat my ultimate purpose, right? Which is to have systems talk to each other. And at an enterprise level, the company our size, or for larger companies, that's our big frustration in sourcing. When I was sourcing, my biggest frustration was having to talk to a bunch of different systems. So self-scheduling or scheduling tools, there are some companies doing it really well. Companies I know really well are doing it really well. But I think at an enterprise level, for large scale and scalability, we have to be really mindful about how we build that.
So scheduling, I mean, that is the one thing for recruitment and talent acquisition professionals, just working on those schedules. And then if you have a coordinator and you have to hand it off and they mess it up one time, you're like, give that back to me.
I mean, we have great coordinators. So, and Amazon had great coordinators too. So all my time at Amazon, I worked with amazing coordinators. I think coordinators play a very key part in the candidate engagement side. They build very strong relationships with our candidates, and they're a great person to know that they can pick up the phone and call that RC whenever they need to. So I have a lot of respect and just love for my RCs. I think there's just things that we can do to make the RC role a little bit more engaging and interesting and a little less administrative. That's my personal opinion. That might not be the opinion of every leader in all of recruiting, but I think that we can make the RC role a much more engaging one by automating just simple tasks.
Yes.
Doesn't mean your job goes away. I'm not saying no more RCs. I'm saying let's make sure that they're focused on the engagement side.
And you know what, in Los Angeles, I always think of like when having the schedule and a hiring manager's schedule where they have like multiple things going on, and then also a whole team perhaps. And in Los Angeles, and where do you live, Noelle? In San Francisco?
I live in Seattle.
Oh, you're in Seattle.
Beautiful Seattle behind me. I live in downtown Seattle.
Right?
Yeah, you're right there. I can see the cars moving right behind you.
I'm in the middle of the street.
Yeah, you're just standing in the middle of the road. You've got a full production crew standing in front of you. You've got a beautiful halo light, I see. So you got the lighting and the production crew. No one's honking at you. In Seattle, they'd not honk at you, but they passive aggressively pass around you and give you a dirty look.
I've heard of this.
I'm kidding, Seattle. I'm kidding.
Is this, I've heard it, there was a term for this, the Seattle freeze.
Yeah, it's a little outdated. We're like 61% of the people that live in urban, like Metro Seattle, are not from Seattle. So I'd say we have more transplants than we do locals at this point. So I don't know if the freeze is necessarily by the design of the fact that we just are spread across different locations in Seattle, like there's bridges that connect different things, or that we just have a lot of people who come from tech in downtown Seattle specifically, who maybe work in the suburbs and don't spend a lot of time in the downtown core, or if they're downtown, they just work and then they, go to their favorite location, like their local pub or their local game place, and then they go home. So I don't know. I don't find it to be that way, but this is also an interesting region where it gets a little chilly and people want to be inside. Right, but we're also very outdoorsy people, and we drive away from the city like I do. I sail a lot, and I drive away from the city and hike a lot, so maybe I'm not doing as many traditionally social activities. But lately, in the last 2 to 3 years, I would say there's a lot more socialization, a lot more meetups and, interest groups. And so on any given Monday or Thursday or Saturday or whatever, there's always 100 things going on in Seattle. So if you feel frozen, because you're standing in the cold on your own, get out there and do some things.
If I were to think of Seattle, I would definitely think of it as a very outgoing, as far as like being outdoors and hiking.
Yeah, definitely an outdoor town. We are an outdoor town. We have like the ocean where my parents live, like just on, just over here. And then we have mountain ranges like that surround us, and the Puget Sound, which sits between the mountain ranges and the ocean. It's just gorgeous. Like people always make me offers for other companies. And I know anyone out there making me an offer for another city, if I've said no, look behind me. This is my view. Like that's Seattle. And that's a normal sunset in Seattle. It doesn't rain as much as people tell you, but don't tell anyone else that. We're okay with less people unless we're recruiting them, and then definitely it's like this all the time. It's so beautiful.
Is Uber headquartered in Seattle?
No, we're headquartered in San Francisco, but we have Uber Engineering has a big hub here in the Seattle location, and that's actually why I get to sit here, because we have a talent acquisition group here as well. So I get to stay in Seattle and do my work from my favorite city, and also, you know, hang out with engineers all the time, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's that brings me to my next question. So as the global leader of sourcing, what does your team look like? How many sourcers are? Is it also recruiters? What is the structure of that team?
Well, it's pretty new. Like I said, I'm still in evolution. Like I'm trying to like put it together. First, I have to get my strategies done. Then I have to launch my programs. I have a PM that works with me right now to help me build some of that stuff. And then ultimately, I would say it's going to be a substantially well-sized team. But honestly, my role is to do the global strategy side of it and work with my leadership to make sure that we're building right-sized, real-time, on-demand, scalable programs that will work globally. And so most of those people will be a very tight circle that maybe like works with me, but then we'll have a cascade of other sourcers that work on specialty sourcing. So
Gotcha.
don't know what the total number will be, but it's going to be a big year. Really excited.
Okay, so we're hiring at Uber.
We are hiring sourcers, senior sourcers at Uber right now. We are hiring technical specifically. I really love the technical folks. So isn't everybody, but our team is specifically hiring technical sourcers right now, and they can sit in Seattle, they can sit in New York, they can sit in, I think Dallas, maybe, don't quote me on that, but I think they can sit in Dallas, and San Francisco. But Seattle is really where, if you want to get into the exciting stuff with me and my team, this is the place to be.
So what are some of the hiring criteria that you look for a good technical recruiter?
Recruiting or sourcer. So we call them differently. We're we're source, or we're, you know, recruiting closing activities. So that's the way the structure is here. We don't have a lot of full life cycle here in my team. I don't know how that works for the rest of Uber yet, but in my team. So I'm looking for people who are technically fluent, so they can, you know, hold their own on a conversation. We have a lot of training available to talk about tech stack, systems design, you know, the type of technology that we work with. I'm looking for somebody who is tools and AI friendly, as I already mentioned, who also has a high candidate engagement desire. So we want them to build solid relationships with their candidates. We are looking for somebody who moves with the pace of the business. So we may change, you know, the type of engineering roles that they're working on or technical roles that they're working on here and there. We'll do some tweaks. So and I need people who are like engaged and want to work with their other colleagues, right? But primarily, and I think that my boss, Catherine, would agree with me that she just really wants productive people who are excited about doing this job. Like, we're passionate about sourcing here. I'm passionate about it. My team is passionate about it. And so we want somebody who's excited to do that type of work and push the edge cases and try new things and look for awesome ways to engage with that the technical community, and not just churn and burn resumes all day. That's not interesting. Uber's got a ton of different types of engineering roles. We're building a ton of different types of technology. You know, you can just go on our website and look at all our product offerings, and some people read it for the first time and go, oh wow, I didn't know you were doing all that, right? So I encourage people to educate themselves a little bit on what Uber is currently doing. And if you're excited about those opportunities, you know, you can find me at TechRecruit, or Hannah will be there with me at TechRecruit. You can talk to her about it. And you can always contact me on LinkedIn as well. I'm very open to LinkedIn contacts.
Are any of these roles open for remote sourcers, or are they all in-house?
I don't know yet. I think it would take a pretty exceptional sourcer to be able to engage with us and collaborate with us. But, you know, let's not take anything off the table. If you're really great at your job, let's just talk, right? But I can't speak for the rest of my sourcing managers on what their preferences are. But I think people who are plugged in to Uber and Uber's mission should be at a hub fairly often. So, yeah. Okay. We'll leave it at that. Like, I'm not going to say yes or no, but I'm going to say you kind of want to be with us. You want to hang out with us and our engineers.
You know, you mentioned earlier the full cycle recruitment professional versus like the division. And there's oftentimes some I feel like clarification needs to be made, and maybe it differs by each company, whether it was like Amazon where you worked previously or at Uber now, but where the sourcing begins and ends, and then when it's handed off to the recruiter, and what does that structure look like for you guys?
So usually it's right after assessment is completed and a phone screen is done. Generally, that's the handoff to the recruiter when they go to onsite, right? So they go to their onsite, and then there's, you know, the traditional onsite method, and then people have the discussion after the candidate has left, and then the recruiter has somehow gotten involved between those two periods of time, and then they'll close the candidate. I am not 100% sold on the full life cycle model, and I'm also not like off the table with full life cycle. And I'll tell people why, because a lot of people are very passionate about this subject. It's like a polarizing issue in the sourcing and recruiting community, which I think is, you know, I get it. I hear both sides all the time. I think sometimes it can burn you out because you're trying to fill your funnel, work your funnel, and close your funnel. And if you're really productive and you work for a company where you have a lot of recs, that can be overwhelming. So I try to look at it on a case-by-case basis. There's some niche roles where you do want to be completely involved with that person from the beginning to the end because of the type of work that they're doing. And you won't be hiring a ton of them because they're super niche. That might be in scientists, that might be in design. I don't know. There might be some very specific people where you're working end to end on the funnel, and I'm, you know, more power to you if that's what works for you. If you're in a small shop and you have to do this, you have to work the full life cycle model. I hope that you're being given a manageable number of requisitions to fill, and that you are not working like crazy 18-hour days to do this. I find that some candidate engagement metrics sort of start to fall off when you have too many recs and a full life cycle model.
Yeah.
Things get missed. The bottom of the bucket gets leaky. People sit in queues for a long time. It's not a great experience for a candidate. And then it's not a great experience for the recruiter who's like constantly overwhelmed and feels exhausted by their job every day. So splitting this into specialty areas where you're the find model, right? The search and research model on the sourcing side. People who thrive in that role are puzzle solvers. They love the find. They love looking for things. They love finding that new person. They love picking up the phone and talking to that person and getting them engaged. It's such an exciting place to be. And then they want to go find more. So they just hand it off to their recruiting partner, and the recruiting partner will pick it up from there once they're coming to onsite or something. And then the closers, you know, negotiations are hard. I've done all of it. And closing is when you're talking about closing like principal product managers or senior engineers or, you know, something really high. It takes a long time to close those people, right? Sometimes it can take months to get them to sign and agree to come over. So I think that you have to dedicate your full self to that role and be good at negotiation and really good at relationship building, and make sure that that candidate feels like you're there for them through their whole journey. After they've been to the onsite, answer all their questions, make sure the hiring managers talk to them if they need to, you know, make sure you get every question marked off. So I don't think you can do that and source your own funnel. At some level, there's going to be a point where those two things should be mutually, not mutually exclusive, but they should be kind of separate enough that you can focus on your work productively. That's just, again, that's just me. That's how I've run my groups before. There's always exceptions to that rule. Just depends on what size company you work in and how many recs you have. But I do think ultimately we have lost in some areas candidate as customer mentality. I think, and I thought this way at Amazon too, every candidate we brought into Amazon was a customer of Amazon, we hoped, right? And so despite how they left that interview, I wanted them to not leave that interview and say, I'm never ordering from Amazon again, because that was a terrible experience. Yeah. I wanted them to leave there either more excited to be a customer, even if they didn't get the job, and to feel like, wow, this company is amazing and they select really smart people and I hope that I can try again and get that job. Or if they joined us, yay, you know, double down on being a customer, right? Internal and external. And then for Uber, I feel the same way. Like people who use Uber services that come and interview with us, those are our customers. So we really have to take a mindful and thoughtful approach to how we treat each and every candidate that comes in, and make sure that candidate as customer mindset is front and center before we talk about other things.
It makes me wonder, because I
Gotta get off my soapbox now. I'm gonna get a little shorter when I jump off the soapbox.
I absolutely agree with the customer as, a client, or, the candidate as a client model. And it makes me think there must have been, and I wonder if there is, been a time when that wasn't the case, where you had to pull back and say, oh, okay, hold on, recruitment team. We got to remember, once we're DQing or disqualifying these candidates, we need to also know that they're going to be shopping on our website or using our app, or also and was there a time where you really had to step in and have that conversation because there was a problem?
Oh yeah, definitely. I won't name the companies, but like that's been happening for years. But and this happened when I worked in video games a long time ago as well, because these are people who played our games and were customers. And generally when I worked in the game companies, it was like customers who also had those skill sets or grew up playing the games and then wanted to be a game developer or a designer or an artist, 2D, 3D, whatever. And then they would spend almost their entire high school and college career waiting to talk to us, and then have an awful experience when they got there. And then you're like, oh, we let them down so badly. I just think that the fill, hyper productivity, numbers on the board, let's go, can backfire, right? So productivity doesn't always win, but it can definitely sink you. Right? So if you're just productivity only and you forget that people are human beings, and you forget that you have to like talk to people and answer their questions correctly, and you're moving too fast and they feel like, hey, do you really want me, or you just need to fill this seat, right? We all know the term for that, but like I want to stay away from that as much as possible in my organization. I'm really proud of how they approach it here at my current company. They have a genuine interest in how people are treated and how they're thought of, and they really do put the candidate as customer mentality first. Same with Amazon. We really push that at Amazon. I think in my early days of building out a couple products there, it was just like the work was so heavy and we were doing so much work that we had to like remind each other constantly that candidate experience was being measured and tracked, and that we had to be thinking of it first and foremost. So very proud of my teams and consumer over at Amazon. They were phenomenal about this, like high marks, fantastic experiences. But you know what? We wouldn't have Glassdoor or Blind.com if we were doing it right. So you want to know how badly you're doing, just go read the reviews, right? There's always bad experiences. And so we can learn from those. We can talk about them openly with our teams, and we can always strive to improve.
Yeah. There's always, that's the thing. How can we constantly improve? What areas can we improve in? It feels like there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely.
Even if you feel like you're doing great, like we could always do better.
Yeah, if you feel like you're stopped learning, you stick a fork in you, you're done, right? So like you can never stop learning, and you can never stop admitting that you don't have all the answers, and that there's never a perfect hum for very long. So I know those days where everything's humming, and that perfect hum is going in your org, and you're like, ooh, things are good, we're jamming, everything's great, we're getting hires, happy hiring managers, happy sourcers, happy recruiters. It only takes one little bink, and then the whole thing comes crashing down. And that means that foundationally there was no true foundation of good there. You just had a good moment. But we want to have longer than moments. We want to have good quarters, we want to have good years, we want to have good decades. So it takes a lot of work to make that happen, and it takes strong leaders to make that happen. And so we really need to look to our leadership to be the drivers of some of these conversations and prioritize some of them.
When you and I first spoke, we chatted about this, and I think this was one of the reasons I asked you to keynote at LAX TechRecruit, because it was the approach to leadership that you spoke about in building that core leadership team, in how you are building and finding sourcing tools, and also how you are building that sourcing team and upping their engagement. So with that, you're going to be speaking at LAX TechRecruit in March. Tell us about what you're going to be talking about.
I'm going to talk about recruiting leadership 2.0. Now, I want to say this because this comes just from my opinion. So all the opinions are my own when it comes to this discussion. But as I evolved from being a sourcer into a strategic sourcer to a sourcing lead, and then managing people as a recruiting manager, and then up from there into a program management role, and then a manager of program managers, and now a senior leader in programs that directly speak to sourcing. And I work in the technology side with some of our recruiting technology teams, as well as the production side, working with how we can help their production go up and also their engagement and career growth. As I've moved through all of the ranks of that, I've noticed there's a couple things that I've missed in my own career with leaders who are not as engaged in our position, our role. And then I've met people who absolutely firmly believe that the sourcing role is an essential portion of recruiting. It is not lesser than, it is not a promotion to become a closer, that this role is a technically challenging, thoroughly investable career path for people. And so in Recruiting Leadership 2.0, I talk a lot about building skill sets and upskilling our sourcing community to make them feel completely empowered, helping them wrap new technology into their jobs fiercely and purposefully, and helping them learn to lead from the seat that they're in. So not hiding behind their computer and finding resumes and throwing them over, the fence all day, but being an active part of the sourcing community. Now, this is being done in a lot of companies for sure, but I think that, when I go to SourceCon and I talk to some of my sourcers who've been around for a while, when I was working at Amazon with a lot of our sourcers there was a question mark over where's my career going next, and are there leaders here that are tuned into my actual work function, and do they understand what sourcing really does and what our daily challenges are, and what it's like to sit in my seat every day and do this work. And so I really want to talk about how do we as leaders put all those pieces together and really focus on the fact that sourcing is going to be much more important in the future of especially in technical recruiting, but much more important in recruiting as we go forward. And that so many of the tools that are being built are built around the search functionality. Some of them include things like diversity. Some of them include things like making sure we're wrapping in good assessment products at the front end of the funnel. And so it's really exciting for me to think, we've been focused on the candidate experience, absolutely important. We've been focused on the recruiter closer side, absolutely important. But when we talk about talent leadership, we don't often talk about sourcers and how we're going to build this career role into something that is an absolute opportunity that they can take all the way through their career and be the quintessential sourcer, right? And do some of the highest grade work that exists out there. So I'll talk about that. You can tell I'm passionate about it just right now. Talk a lot with my hands when I'm passionate about things. You can't see that if you're listening to the podcast, but I'll wave my hands around a lot, gesticulating wildly. But I get really excited when I get a group of inquisitive sourcers in front of me who just want to know what's the next thing that we can crush, give us the next amazing tool, or how can I learn how to SQL code, or can I work on the back end of our ATS, can I optimize this and that. That's what I'm excited to see sourcing turn into. And I'm hiring some people who came out of computer science engineering to help me. I hire people who have had mathematics degrees to help me. I think that we're just going to mix all kinds of cool people in this space going forward, and we're gonna see a big shift in the way that sourcing is treated in the next 2 to 5 years. If I'm doing my job right, and if some other sourcing leaders out there join me on this mission, I think that this is going to be a fantastic place for us to see big gains in recruiting and talent acquisition.
You mentioned previously to me that sourcing is no longer going to be the career path you accidentally fell into.
Yes.
It's going to be one that you choose as a practice.
Absolutely. It's an intentional shift to come into this role, and we have to build that career path as an opportunity for new college grads, right? So being technically fluent and being a people person, perfect. This is a great place for you to spend your time. This is an awesome role. It's financially rewarding, it's intellectually rewarding, and you get to spend your time helping people find jobs. And that's a fantastic way to live your life, and helping people change their careers and find new opportunities. So I think that if we build that destination role or job family, we will bring in some of the best minds. And for sourcers out there who might feel a little stuck in their role because they're working in a company that doesn't see sourcing that way, I encourage you to start differentiating yourself with the talents that I know that are inside of you. Your big ideas, your thoughts, and sharing knowledge with your community and so forth. I think we're going to develop this into an intentional choice career. And I just think that takes a little bit of good PR and great marketing, and also other leaders to stand up and say, we value your resource, your abilities. We want to build you into a super solid and strong sourcer, and you don't have to be a closer in order to take the next step. No offense to my closer friends out there, I love you too, but sourcing is a fantastic career.
I really enjoy the passion behind that, but also the career path and the opportunity that you're offering, because it is the opportunities within that that's really important to make it a practice of choice. And in our conference, really that was the goal, to give recruitment and talent acquisition professionals not just the knowledge of what they're doing in their own lane, like not just learning just about sourcing, or not just an employer branding conference or just a people analytics conference, but really, like you said, you talked earlier about what you look for in a recruitment leader, and it's the domain knowledge, right? The understanding of the technology, especially if they're a tech sourcer, but also in that ability to communicate. And, with the knowledge of analytics and how data impacts your process, and accepting of automation and AI tools, and being able to work within that, or learning how to code, or learning all the tools within sourcing and employer branding and ad campaigns across the board. Being able to be educated across those things makes you exponentially more valuable.
Absolutely. And then it's our job as leaders to give you those opportunities, and to not say it's taking away from your productivity if we teach you skill, right? So to carve out time and to let subject matter experts come to the table from our business or industry side to teach you about what systems design looks like in our core products, to teach you what the tech stack really is at our company and how we're using it. And so this is an interesting opportunity for sure. Like, I was talking to a sourcer who I know very well, who's been in the sourcing role for about 10 years. And when he was talking to me, he was saying that the tech stack at our company, previous company, he's like, I've known the tech stack for the last 10 years. And I said, well, how much work have you done to learn what's new in the tech stack at this company? And he was like, oh no, it's, we're all basically Java coders around here and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I feel like you're missing an opportunity. Our products have iterated and evolved, and we have new technologies out there that are reliant on things like machine learning. And, I think you're missing the boat on what the tech stack really is in current day, and what future state will look like. So I encourage you to go back every 6 months to a year and talk to those really influential engineers in the company and say, where are we today versus 6 months ago or a year ago? What is coming in the future in our technology stack? What are we working on that no one else is working on? Because you're stale. Like, I'm comfortable with him, so I could tell him, your knowledge is really stale, and I think it's going to hold you back in your career. And thankfully we're good enough friends, he didn't take that as a negative, pejorative, and he was like, no, you're right. He went and spoke with one of the senior engineers and a software development manager and a couple of principals that he knew, and got more information about what's coming. And I think he's rearmed with new information about the tech stack. But it's your job as a sourcer to constantly refreshing your knowledge around that, and asking questions like, what's next? What are we building next that I can talk to my candidates about that are going to blow their minds, if I can share it with them? And if I can't, what am I allowed to share with them? Because tech stacks change, and core fundamental computer science is going to be core fundamental computer science, like math. But everything else, the way that we put it all together, the way the puzzle looks at the end of the day, is going to constantly change. And it's our responsibility to go find that knowledge, be fluent enough in it that we can have reasonable conversations about it as sourcers, and then engage candidates in new and exciting ways.
And you mentioned this earlier, these two skill sets. There was this company, it was Wayfair actually. Sadly, they just laid off a bunch of people.
Yeah.
They
Sorry,
had
Wayfair.
I know,
Please
but
apply for
hey,
our jobs.
opportunity for you maybe.
Yeah. Whoever
Um,
put the Google sheet out there, I really appreciate you, by the way.
yeah.
That was really cool.
So they had a people analyst who went through and looked at all these annual reviews, and it was 6,000 annual reviews, and he identified 2 skill sets that were most important to the company. I just thought this was fascinating study that he did. And the 2 skill sets, number 1 was communication across stakeholders and departments, the ability to step outside your desk and go and talk to people across different departments and build relationships. Key.
Yes.
And then
Absolutely.
number 2, ownership of your process. Oftentimes you're in a situation where you don't have all the answers and you need to be proactive about owning your process.
If it's hierarchical in your company, I can understand why that can be a challenge for some people. They don't want to like overstep or I'm going to just say, this is just me. Everyone from Uber, stop listening to me right now. I believe that is the way that other people hold you back, is to build hierarchy into the sourcing role that says you can't have direct contact with. Now, if you work in an agency, you're probably not going to have that. You're not going to be able to walk down the hallway and talk to the engineer that's working on the thing. But if you're lucky enough to work inside of a corporate environment and sit with some of those technology individuals, which is why the remote is good, but I like people to be in the building where they can, discuss frequently. I want them to go feel free to talk to somebody who does a thing that they don't know anything about. Back at Amazon, I used to tell all of my grads from my academy or the cohort members, we have talks at Amazon, there's posters everywhere. Pick 3 subjects a month or 2 subjects a month you don't know anything about, but the poster says, please come to this talk, and just attend it, right? Just go, even if it's something that feels way outside of your scope of comfort or understanding. And as you attend these, month over month, time after time, you'll meet new engineers, you'll meet people who are moving the needle on technology and doing some of the backbone fundamental work that is really important for the organization. And the same here, the more we can go down the hallway and listen to people talk about their product launches and talk about the specific technology they're using. Now, if you have somebody in your organization that's stopping you from doing that, please find a way to move around that. And you'll hear me talk a little bit more about this, both at TechRecruit and SourceCon in March in Seattle. But I strongly believe that in order for you to be fantastic at your job, you need to remove those barriers for yourself. And I know that a lot of people who work in sourcing are kind of the quiet types that are a little bit introverted and they have a tough time moving around that. But then take one of us, the less introverted people, with you, and bring people along to help you pave the way, like other colleagues or peers. But it is our responsibility to educate ourselves and stay relevant and connected to the work that's being done in technology. And if you're non-tech, same thing. Talk to the marketing people, talk to the product leaders, whatever that is. Just get up out of your chair and meet with people. Now, if you're remote, go to meetups, right? Find some leaders and go to meetups. If you are not remote and you sit in your organization, what is preventing you from finding out more information? If you work at an agency, ask to go along for the next client meeting. Push it, ask for it, right? But be prepared. Don't show up unprepared and just ask a million questions. Just listen and then ask your leaders, when is a good time for me to ask some clarifying questions? And if you need to run them by them first, do that. But inform yourself and motivate yourself to stay informed.
As we are wrapping up here today, Noelle, I want to point something out that stands out to me about your personality that I think is so key to leadership. And it was another reason why I wanted you to talk, because it comes through in your persona and how you talk about your leadership. And it's having those direct conversations with your employees, with your staff, but in a way that builds trust. And that says, I want you to succeed. I'm not just dumping on you and being critical. I'm saying this, and yes, it might hurt, telling somebody they need to they're falling behind the curve and they need to upskill, like you were mentioning earlier with your employee or your staff member. But having those direct conversations is key. Is that something that you had to learn, or have you always been that way?
I think I've always been that way, but I've also, I'll use a Jeff Bezos phrase that is one of my favorite, and that's be prepared to be misunderstood for a long period of time. I didn't know why I was the leader that I was, but I think what's key here, and you kind of hit on it, is honesty with humanity radical candor, whatever you want to call it. I really care about the people that I work with as human beings. And anyone who's worked closely with me will tell you, I think the same thing, that I truly do care about them. That can be perceived, because I'm a very direct person, it can be perceived badly, but that's usually because I think people infer they project their own expectations into our conversations or our interactions. I'm a very dry humor, very direct, very like stark person, but I'm also a deeply human person. And I really, really want people to value their job and to not go home at night and be tied up in knots and feel terrible about the work that they do. I want them to feel like they're learning, they're growing, they're seen, they're recognized. And sometimes I have to move them out of their kind of like mediocrity or their comfort zone in order to do that. So that takes a little bit being direct, but after a while, and I think some people that we meet or that will see me at Talk will confirm this because they know me fairly well. Once they know that I'm doing that for good reasons, then I think that's where the trust comes in. So anyone who works for me will get a tremendous amount of coaching and cheerleading and also direct feedback. So, and it's because I care. It's because I care about their jobs, and I care about all sourcers, right? But I am going to say, if you're just sitting there getting by, just doing a little bit of your job so that you're throwing numbers over the board and you're front loading your phone screens and you're doing all the things that help you hide behind numbers that other people don't understand, it's not a great feeling. You'll always feel a little bit worried about your job. So you need good leaders to remind you that inside of you, you have much more to offer. And I want those people to work for me. And I also want to draw that out of them.
Yes. Awesome. Noelle?
Sources are amazing. I care about all of you, and I want you to do really well in your roles.
The evolution in sourcing is extremely interesting. I come from a data analyst background, so the data component of recruitment is fascinating to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Think about all the data in your applicant tracking systems and how much you can do with it. We'll talk a little bit about that in TechRecruit, but like there's so much power in knowledge and so much ability when you think about all the things that are available to us on a daily basis in the sourcing world. And it's our job to queue them all up in the right way and launch ourselves into the next level of sourcing.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be so amazing. Noelle, if anybody would like to reach out to you, how can they find you?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I check link. I'm not an obsessive LinkedIn person, but if you send me a personal message and not just an invite, generally I will read it. For those of you I haven't answered because I've had an abundance since you've been posting some things, I get to it. I'll get to it, I promise. And then, here's the best way to really apply for one of my jobs at Uber and get through the interview process and come work for me. And then you get to see me all the time. So if you're an amazing sourcer, we have open roles, so do that. But if not that, then just go ahead and ping me on LinkedIn and ask specific questions or let me know what you're reaching out to me about, and then that helps me figure it out. Or come up and say hi to me at any one of the conferences that I speak with. Especially if you bring a Pinot Noir with you, that's really good, and specifically from Oregon. I'll spend a little bit more time with you. Oregon Pinot Noir is my favorite. So if you walk up to me with a really nice glass of that, we're probably gonna have a longer conversation than most. So hint, hint, just kidding.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. All right. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you, Noelle. You have yourself a wonderful day.
I'll see you soon. All right. Bye.